All right, a better section, amines. Amines are compounds that contain nitrogen. Biologically important? What kinds of compounds in your body contain nitrogen? Muscles. Okay, and we'll talk about proteins on Wednesday. So, here are 3 examples of amines. All amines are derivatives of ammonia with more or less carbons on them. Okay? They might even contain an aromatic ring there. Amines, like alcohols, can be divided into primary, secondary, and tertiary. Anybody want to explain the difference between primary, secondary, and tertiary by looking at those 3 pictures right there?
Primary has 1 carbon, secondary has 2 carbons, tertiary has 3 carbons.
That's all you gotta know. Primary, first, 1 carbon attached to nitrogen. Secondary, 2 carbons attached to the nitrogen. Tertiary, 3 carbons attached to the nitrogen. Does this make any difference? Yes, it does. Just like it made a difference when we talked about reactions that alcohols can undergo. Tertiary alcohols cannot be oxidized, right? Secondary alcohols can only be oxidized to ketones. Primary alcohols can be oxidized all the way up to carboxylic acid. We're getting into the drug scene now. Methylamine, we're talking about Breaking Bad fans. Anybody watch Breaking Bad, the whole thing? Methylamine is one of the precursors to meth that they use, right? In their sequence that they use. So that's what methylamine is right there, right? Has a methyl group and an amine group. And they're bonded together, carbon and nitrogen. And actually you have to have a license now to buy this stuff, right? Because too many people are trying to make meth these days. So, simple amines are named by naming the alkyl group with the ending amine. We're not going to worry about naming amines so much. Sometimes you'll see an amine that's attached to an aromatic ring. This one is called aniline. It's very common and is used for making precursors for all kinds of drugs and stuff. They're also used in many dyes and stuff. Okay? They bond to the fibers very easily with this aromatic ring and the nitrogen and can be used to change the color of various things.
So would you need to get a license to get that if you want to like dye a shirt?
No, because it's much more difficult to make that to where you want it to go. All right, I'm not worried about the names here. I want you to tell me primary, secondary, and tertiary.
Tertiary?
This one? Very good, Alice. Isn't that what you said? Allison, why?
Because there's 3 carbons.
Because there's 3 carbons on the nitrogen, right?
Mm-hmm. Secondary.
This one's secondary. But I only see 1 carbon on there.
There's 1 in the...
There's 1 right here too, right? There's a carbon here. These are all carbons at the corners, right? So this is secondary, okay? Don't worry about this. Now, what about solubility of amines? Amines are very soluble because nitrogen is right next to oxygen on the periodic table, right? Nitrogen is also very electronegative, means it loves electrons. So things that have nitrogen in them tend to be very water soluble, okay? Particularly small things, okay? Things that have 6 carbons or less are soluble. Now you should recognize this is big different than everything we've talked about so far. What's our normal rule for when you're soluble?
4 or less.
4 or less. Exception, right? Amines are when you have 6 or less. They're water soluble. Okay? So, tell me, are these soluble or not? Is the first one soluble?
Yes.
Why?
It has 3 carbons.
Only has 3 carbons. What about B?
Yes. 3 carbons.
Only has 3 carbons. What about C?
Yes. It's got 4 carbons.
But there's no nitrogen in it. So what do you know about that, Jennifer?
It is not an amine.
It is not an amine. So is it water soluble? No, there's no amine there. There's no nitrogen there. We said amines with 6 or less are soluble. That's not an amine, that's just an alkane, isn't it?
Yeah, but it still only has 4, so it's still soluble.
Butane's not water soluble. Alkanes aren't water soluble at all. None of them are. They have to have a functional group on them to make them water soluble. Like alcohols, ethers, esters, right? Ketones, aldehydes become water soluble because of that oxygen. Alkanes are not water soluble. All right. Here we talked about oil spills not being water soluble. Butane is not water soluble. Okay. All right. What kind of reactions do bases undergo? Well, when I put ammonia in water, it forms the ammonium ion. Well, methylamine, when you put it in water, it accepts a proton, it acts as a base. Ammonia is a base. The amines act as bases and accept protons. Okay? That's pretty easy. We've talked about acid-base chemistry, right? Accepting protons. Amines are all bases. They accept protons. Okay? And when you have an amine like that, you can also then have a amine salt. Meaning what? When you do a neutralization reaction, you form the salt. So if the amine is a base, and we add an acid, like citric acid from that lemon, we neutralize the acid. That's why, right? We neutralize the acid, we also neutralize the base. That's why when you go to a restaurant, they serve lemon with your fish. You squeeze that lemon on your fish and it neutralizes that amine salt. So what happens? You don't smell the fish as strongly anymore. Okay? If you just cook fish, it has a pretty strong smell, right? You ever notice when you squeeze lemon on it, it doesn't smell so fishy anymore? Next time you cook fish, do that. It's because it neutralizes it. Okay? It neutralizes that amine salt.
Does it have anything to do with neutralization in terms of pH?
Yes, it does. You're adding an acid and the amine's a base, right? So it neutralizes it. Exactly. That's exactly why it does it. Okay. Same types of things. Here we have methylamine plus hydrogen chloride, hydrochloric acid. The amine accepts the proton and then it's attracted to the chloride. Same thing down here, even though it's a secondary alcohol or secondary amine, it still accepts a proton. Properties of amines. Amines are common in lots of drugs. We're going to start talking about drugs here in a second. The ammonium salt is used as drugs. They're water soluble, they're easily converted, and there's lots of different examples, and we're going to talk about some of them. Ammonium salts are active ingredients in lots of medications like ephedrine or diphenhydramine. Ephedrine, common in Sudafed, right? Note that it's an amine right here. Primary, secondary amine.
Secondary?
It's secondary because it has 2 carbons on it, and ephedrine makes most people kind of wired, right? Makes most people jacked up. Diphenhydramine, on the other hand, is a tertiary amine because it has 1, 2, 3 carbons on it. And diphenhydramine is the active ingredient in Benadryl.
Makes you sleepy.
Makes you very sleepy. Okay?
Makes you sleepy.
At least for
That
most
one on
people.
the left was what?
This is
Secondary?
ephedrine. Is a secondary, yes. Because there's 2 carbons on the nitrogen, right? Now here we're going to get into some better stuff. Cocaine. Cocaine on the left, crack cocaine on the right. Notice any differences? Look at the differences between the two. They're both isolated from the same cocoa leaves, right? You actually isolate cocaine first, and then you add a base to it to make free base or crack cocaine. Look at the difference here. All that's changed is that. By adding sodium hydroxide to it, you get rid of this H, and it makes water, right? That comes here, and then the chloride goes with the sodium. Now, a story I tell in the other classes, a lot of you guys don't remember the time before crack cocaine. You've kind of grown up with that in our society, right? I remember a time when there wasn't even cocaine around. It didn't even get popular until the 80s, really. And then there was a comedian by the name of Richard Pryor. You might know who he is? No? He was a really famous stand-up comedian, like Kevin Hart or somebody like that, because he was better than him. He was one of the pioneers of stand-up comedy, okay? He had a bad drug problem. He liked to freebase cocaine. This is before you could buy crack cocaine. Drug dealers weren't selling crack cocaine. They were only selling powder cocaine. Well, the addicts figured out if you take it and you put a little bit of lye and you put a little solvent on it, lye being a base, and you heat it up, you can make your own crack cocaine, and then you can pull it up in a needle and inject it in your arm. What happens? Well, Richard Pryor set himself on fire trying to do this. And so the drug dealers got smart. And they said, well, you know, we got a lot of people trying to do this on their own to make crack, basically, freebase cocaine. Let's make it for them. It's more addictive. And not only are we going to make it for them, we're going to cut the price. We'll sell it to them cheap. So what do you think happened? They sold more. They made more money, didn't they? Yeah. So people stopped using powder cocaine as much and started using crack cocaine because it's more effective and it's cheaper. That's kind of scary to think we're able to do that, isn't it? Okay? But that's the only difference between crack cocaine and powder or regular cocaine, right? Cocaine hydrochloride. Do what?
Cells still work long enough for them to figure that out.
Yeah, well, if you're a drug dealer, you're probably, well, the guys at the top are smart and they don't use this stuff, right? Now, anybody know the history of cocaine? You know, it used to be legal, right? A lot of these drugs didn't become
They
They
legal.
used to put it in Coke.
Yeah, that's why it's called Coca-Cola. It was made from cocoa leaves. It had cocaine in it. Pepsi originally had cocaine in it, right?
That's what made it so addictive.
Huh?
That's what made it so addictive.
Yes, it's exactly what made it so addictive at the time. Yeah, that's why they sold lots of it back in the early 1900s. Yep. Because it had cocaine in it. Pepsi had cocaine in it. Okay. They were prescribed. Doctors would tell people to go drink. If you were, you know, as an antidepressant, people would tell you if you're in pain, go drink a Coke, right? Well, of course, it's got cocaine. It'll make you feel better. And then they pass laws and you can't put that in your Coke anymore. It's so-called Coke.